So welcome everybody. I'm Brooks Rayford, CEO of NC Tech. I want to welcome all of you here in the room, but also our online audience. We have a number of folks who are listening to us and watching us through streaming. This is our third quarter session of our government vendor network. We meet quarterly as the name implies, but also as needed. So I was just saying in the pre-meeting, we were pleased to be able to feature the new state CIO, Tina Piccioni, who would say she's not so new anymore probably, but at the time she was, in the spring, not long after she began in her new role. And so we're always excited to amplify the partnership, longtime relationship between NCDIT and NC Tech. Chris Estes, former state CIO, is here, and he can attest that we've worked together for a long time as department and association, but also as CIOs come and go, they never really go, right, Chris? They remain engaged, which we're really happy about. A quick note, as I alluded to, we are also streaming, so we're recording this session. And if you're registered for this event, either way, you'll get a follow-up email within the next day or so with a link to the video of this session, as well as the slide deck and any materials from today's session. A few updates before we get into our agenda. The annual NC Tech Awards program is something where every summer we go live with an application nomination period where companies can apply directly for a variety of different kinds of awards around use of tech, or if they're tech companies, there's categories for them as well as some individual awards. So CIO of the Year, CISO of the Year, Tech Exec of the Year, that sort of thing. And the period for that is now open. It actually closes this end of this week. So be sure that your organization has looked to see if there might be categories that are worth applying for. Application is the norm. You can nominate someone for an individual award or a partner, business partner, et cetera, client for an organizational award, but they then get notified that you've done so and they're prompted to then fill out the information. We do that because we want the committee that reviews all of this to have fairly equal quality inputs to be able to review. And if it comes from the nominee, sometimes that can beat what the nominator is equipped to even put in. So keep that in mind if you nominate others. Finalists for the awards are selected by an independent process and are announced in the fall. Winners are announced live at the NC Tech Awards celebration event. That'll be, it's a little later this year just because of availability of the convention center, but early December at the Raleigh Convention Center, we'll have our largest event of the year where all the announcements celebrating all the finalists, announcing the winners will take place. So I encourage you to check our site, nctech.org, to find out how to participate either as an award applicant or nominee or to attend and participate in the event. Our next signature event for this year is actually, there are two events back-to-back in Pinehurst, not a bad place to be at all. Our annual Golf Classic takes place on August the 6th, and there are 2 foursome spots left, I think, for sponsors to claim if you're interested. And then that evening and then the next day is our annual Leadership Summit, always a popular gathering for our members. We'd love to see your organization represented, so again, please check out all the details on our site. For today, I want to thank Smith Anderson for hosting and sponsoring our session. They have encouraged me to let you know or remind you, if you already know, that there is food from Cafe Luna, no less, in the back of the room and beverages. So please help yourself. There may be some other floors of the firm that would like to come and take what's not taken, but we encourage you to enjoy during the program, and certainly when we conclude, that's available for you. Also pleased, is Byron in the room? Byron? No? Okay, well, Byron Kirkland is managing partner of the firm, was in the pre-meeting. He might come in at some point. He's on the board of NC Tech. So again, just want to reiterate thanks for the firm's accommodation and support of this session. And on that front, we are going to offer you a few words of greeting and to introduce our speaker, Mitch Armbruster, who's a partner with the firm. Mitch, thanks very much for the hospitality.
Thank you, Brooks. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Mitch Armbruster. Smith Anderson is pleased to sponsor and host today's session of the NC Government Vendor Network. I'm part of the firm's regulatory team, lead the administrative litigation practice, which you can see I had to wear a tie today. It proves I'm a litigator. And we deal with government contracting matters, bid protests, and tech issues of many times. Our firm primarily serves business clients, including many in the tech sector, which makes us all the more pleased to be hosting this event today. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Issa Sieh, who was recently named to the new position of Deputy Secretary for AI and Policy with the North Carolina Department of Information Technology. Before joining NCDIT in March of this year, Issa served as Governance and Data Ethics Practice Principal for SAS, which he joined in 2004. He helped develop AI strategies and solutions as a consultant for policymakers, the United Nations, Fortune 1000 executives, and nonprofits. Issa is no stranger to NC Tech, given that both SAS and NCDIT are both longtime members of the association. Please join me in welcoming him to today's session.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming out on this hot day. And yeah, my name is Issa Sieh, and I am the Deputy Secretary for AI and Policy for the state. And I come here from SAS, where I spent 21 years. Maybe Alex, go up a little bit there, a little more. There you go. Let's pause on the go down one. There you go. My 21 years at SAS, did a lot of work, but I think my favorite was my work with the United Nations, right? And I just want to start by sharing this story. It was about 10 years ago, this past March, actually. This is a picture from Nepal. I don't know if anybody remembers the Nepal earthquakes that happened in 2015, but I had just started working with the United Nations on behalf of SAS and trying to bring, to them advanced analytics and big data capabilities, just to come alongside them after big disasters. And I'd helped them 2 years before with the Typhoon Haiyan, which up until that point was the only natural disaster that was ranked like a category 5 disaster by the UN. So like the UN, they rank these events to show you how serious they are. Like Syria was a class 5 disaster. So Typhoon Haiyan, and in that situation, that was my first time working with the UN, where I had been working with them before, but then this disaster happens, and so I just, all you can do is just sit there and feel bad from halfway around the world, right? But I thought, hey, let me reach out to my friend at the UN and see how we can help. And so he gets on the phone with me, and this was, again, Typhoon Haiyan in 2013. He gets on the phone with me at midnight his time. That was the only time he had a break, and it's noon here, and I get on the phone, and it sounds like Grand Central Station, right? I mean, they're coordinating like 250,000 displaced people across 225 camps all around the Philippines. And but it was one of those moments for me that was like, okay. So I said, hey, I don't know anything about your world, but I do have a small army of analytics and data experts here. How can we help? And I said, why don't you send over that spreadsheet? They're managing 225 camps and 250,000 people on an Excel spreadsheet. And you know what? Nobody does it better than them in the world, right? But I said, just hand that over. But within a half an hour, I was able to call him back, at 12:30 a.m. his time and just say, you know what? Here are some of the stories we're seeing in your data. If you're worried about, worried about the elderly, right? Skin disease and diarrhea seem to be really prevalent in your data. And so we just started unpacking the stories in their data. And so that was the first time that I realized that, wow, technology, analytics, and now AI, right? The things that we can do in an afternoon can make a huge amount of impact. And I think that was the start of my, I've been working with the UN prior to that, but I worked in total 15 years with the United Nations on behalf of SAS, and that prepared my heart and my mind for public service. And so when people ask, well, what are you doing here at the state? I said, you know what? It's funny. Forgive me for putting up a picture of Nepal, because I thought I'd be telling that story, but instead I'm telling you the story about Typhoon Haiyan. But I think all of those things just prepared me. And, of all the work I did with the UN and doing meaningful work, it added this whole new element to my job satisfaction. But having said that, All right, sorry, I'm trying to get ahead of myself. Um, so I did all that work with the United Nations, and it continues to be some of my favorite work. But then SAS started saying, why don't we expand our data for good work to more than just the United Nations, right? There are a lot of other organizations out there that need help, that need to understand the art of the possible as it relates to data and analytics and AI. And so that's how the Data for Good program was formed at SAS, which helped start and lead. And then I started to also, once AI started coming around, the idea of needing to change, needing to do AI well, needing to do AI right, and making sure that you're managing your AI appropriately. When we were at SAS, we saw that coming about 5 years ago, right? And so we started getting our C-suite together to really, even before AI governance was a thing. So that afforded me the opportunity to take those learnings. So that, for example, when ChatGPT kind of hit the scene in November of 2022, we were at SAS disrupted just as much as everybody else was. But the difference was we had already had our AI governance committees and framework in place. So we were able to take that disruption, right, create an artificial, generative art AI policy, and then just keep rolling, right? And AI, Gen AI won't be the last disruption we see, right? So really, my goal and my role here at the state is to say, and the reason I came here is to say, all right, AI is too important to not get right, and not get right the first time on some of these topics, especially around health and financial stuff, right? So how do we do this? Next slide, please. And for me, I start all of my conversations, internal and external, with this one word, trust, right? Because without trust from our citizens to us, without trust of our employees, and so I got to travel the world. I got to speak to public and private sector entities around the world, Fortune 100 companies, and the number one question always was, hey, is AI going to take my job, right? And it's no different here in the state of North Carolina. And there's a lot of anxiety around it. So we're not going to move very fast. We're not going to get very far if we don't have trust, right? The trust of our people, the trust of the people that we serve. But then there's also the other end of the spectrum of overtrust, right? Some people just trust systems and artificial intelligence too much. And that's not a great thing either. So how do we walk that fine line? And if you don't believe me, that trust is the most important ingredient to any AI strategy. Next slide. We can ask our friends at Waymo, right? I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I have dreamed all my life of self-driving vehicles. And so can you imagine taking this idea and being able to test it out and put it in the lab and get it to the point where you're like, okay, this thing is ready and safe enough for public consumption. And you push it out on the streets of San Francisco just to have this happen, right? And it happened again in LA recently with some of the riots there. So all this just reminds us that no matter how good our algorithms or technologies are, without trust, it's useless, right? So next slide, please. Anybody here ever heard of Edelman PR? They are the largest PR firm in the world, and they've done for, I think, about 20 years, maybe a little more, an annual survey on trust. And so this is the Edelman Trust Barometer, and it's kind of a busy slide, but they measure four areas, right? Business, nonprofits, media, and government. And the summarization of this slide is, right now, business is the only one that's seen as both competent and ethical, as in the trusted category, right? Trust in government is at an all-time low. Okay. And it's interesting because I've been playing with this data for a number of years. Before the pandemic, it was the exact opposite, right? Trust in business was super low, trust in government was super high. But this is where we are today. Trust in government's at all-time low. This year, Edelman also said, you know what? Let's ask a separate question. If we were to ask you to choose right now. Are you fully embracing AI or do you reject AI, right? 33% said, yep, I'll embrace it. 35% said, if you force me, I'll have to pump the brakes. I'm not quite ready. We're going a little too fast for my comfort. And then you have the rest in between that are just trying to figure it out. So trust in AI, I would say, is at an all-time low as well. So here we are, right? I am with the government. I'm here to help. Like, how do we do this thing? Next slide, please. And a little more context for the environment that we're trying to we're trying to operate in. So we did get some guidance from the White House around, just back in April. So they rescinded the previous executive order by the Biden administration, but they actually did come out with some hopeful and some guidance around use of responsible AI, right? So as states and agencies, their executive order just expressed the importance of AI that is trustworthy and safe. Next slide, please. And then one last context slide, and I'll dive into what we're doing in North Carolina. This slide actually was done in March, and as soon as April hit, it already went out of date so what you're seeing light up are all the states that where the state legislators are considering some sort of bill with artificial intelligence in it. And you'll notice that North Carolina is missing. But in this last session, there were 8 artificial intelligence bills that we considered here in North Carolina. The challenge is that each one of those bills had a different definition of AI, right? So, and AI is so big, and like, how do we get very far? How do we have a productive discussion if we're defining artificial intelligence differently? And so again, it's going very quickly. We thought for a moment, the reconciliation bill that just got passed in DC might impact. There was this thing about a moratorium on states, but that didn't make it. So we're kind of, it's still the Wild West for us, right? And we at the state level are left to figure it out on our own a little bit. Okay, next slide, please. So here are the 4 pillars for us as North Carolina's Department of IT. And this is true no matter who within NCDIT you're speaking to. We're focusing on emerging technologies and innovation, right? Cyber maturity, agency and public sector collaboration, and then just developing our workforce. So with that as a launching point, next slide, here are some of my focus areas for us as a state as it relates to AI. One, let's kind of unify and agree on how we talk about AI, how we measure AI, right? From a methodology standpoint, my vision is for us to have the most AI literate state workforce in the nation. And by the way, that I don't think that's a high bar, because there's a difference between literacy and fluency, right? My 2 years of high school Spanish, I'm literate in Spanish. I would never try to say that I am fluent in Spanish. So, but let's have at least the most AI literate state workforce. Let's have at least the most AI literate citizens in the United States. There is a lot of AI. There are a lot of AI innovation dollars floating around. And what we would love is for people to start saying, anytime we hire folks from North Carolina, they do it right. They think about it the right way. They approach it the right way. They're really thoughtful about responsible AI, trustworthy AI. That is my job. That is why I was brought to the state. And I think that is a differentiator for us here in North Carolina. And so we're having a lot of conversations with my peers in other states about what that means, and we're able to share and learn from them as well. And then the third pillar for me in the short to midterm is just AI innovation, right? AI is moving so fast. How do we keep up? So we need to do some things a little bit differently at the state. So I can share some of our ideas and some of the themes behind it. But I will say this. I am so grateful to have a governor that understands and appreciates the value and the potential of AI. And so working pretty closely with this office, and you guys will hear some new stuff, some more stuff coming out in the near future around North Carolina and AI. Next slide, please. So for me, I had the block out some other stuff, but at least to give you a sense of the trajectory where we are headed as a state. So step one, let's define AI, shall we? And next slide. I won't get into too many of the details, but what is artificial intelligence for us here at the state? So I mentioned I came from SAS, where we were doing, neural networks, and next slide, please, machine learning, and just good old-fashioned statistics, which is the foundation of artificial intelligence, right? And by the way, AI has been around, in my definition, for decades, right? I won't go into, well, let me give you the 60-second primer on AI. I find most people appreciate this because when you start talking words like deep learning and neural networks, I'm sorry, us quantitative geeks, like we just love our fancy terms. But let me break it down on what these things mean for folks. Like it all started with math and statistics, right? But then as we're building models, we started saying, you know what, let's build these algorithms that can at least recognize patterns and not require me to just sit there and babysit this thing the whole time. And so that's where things started to get a little more sophisticated in the 50s and 60s around like machine learning and then neural networks, right? To again go and deep learning. Each one got a little more sophisticated in terms of pattern recognition and having these models be able to say, oh, well, if I see these kind of patterns, then I know what next step to take, instead of always forcing the human to have to sit there and babysit it. But where the big breakthrough has come was, again, with generative AI, with ChatGPT back in 2022. And then now, of course, again, we love our technology and our terms and our buzzwords, right? So agentic AI is now the big buzz for this year, and so on and so forth. So we define AI as like all of it, right? And let me give a little more detail here. Next slide. So to just make it simple for everybody, we looked at all different formal definitions of artificial intelligence out there, and we have selected at DIT the European Union's version, the EU AI Act, right? And some might be asking, well, why are we in America choosing the European flavor of and definition of artificial intelligence? Quite simply put, this is the one that was the first one out there. It is the broadest definition of artificial intelligence by which our legislators can legislate around, and this thing has been banged on, by European Parliament, and any company that we either do business with at the state or want to do business with at the state, any company that's doing business in the European Union has to adhere and abide by the EU AI Act. So now it becomes a very familiar, at least levels the playing field. Next slide, please. And by the way, the EU AI Act also comes with a list of, kind of refined high risk and prohibited use cases, which my colleagues in procurement really appreciate, because like everybody's trying to figure out this AI thing, and now how do we build these AI considerations into our new contracts and all that. But at least, right, we're just trying to get some guardrails in place. Next slide. And you can keep going. One more, please, Alex. But EU AI Act came out before generative AI, before ChatGPT came out. So it actually doesn't define what generative AI is, right? So we at the state then took the American National Institute of Standards and Technology, and when we say generative AI, that's the definition that we follow. So next slide, please. So for us at the state, right, let's walk, let's crawl before we can run kind of thing. So where to start? As I look to build trust from within all 60,000 state employees, to help them understand, and it's publicly known, that we have a 20% gap between the workers that we have and the workers that we need, right? Like the math doesn't even work for us to even consider getting rid of our employees. So please don't worry about that, right? So for us, my personal goal is to help us as a state, in every agency and on average, like become 25% more efficient, right? And so how do we do that? Let's look at actions that involve a lot of repetition. Let's look at, we can ask everybody, what are the most undesirable tasks, right? Like that you would be glad to hand off. One thing that from an individual AI literacy standpoint, we're just encouraging everybody and putting trainings around it. It's just like, okay, how do you prompt? How do you engage AI so that it can be helpful to you from a personal productivity standpoint, right? So consider it as anytime you ask yourself, like, man, I wish there was a specialist around on, and I'm always learning and I'm always testing myself, like, oh, I've never asked AI this question. And then I'll go whenever I'm trying to make a decision on something. And we find that chatbots and digital assistants are really great and safe place right now for everybody to step into AI. But we certainly aren't going to stop there. One of my favorite tweets of the last 2 years, somebody said, you know what, the hottest new programming language is now the English language, right? With large language models. So now all of a sudden, right? I don't know if anybody remembers a time back in the day, we thought, I preach this too. It's like, man, it wouldn't be a bad idea for everybody to learn computer science. Like that's gone now, right? And with this age of AI and generative AI, now it's like, no, just know English, know how to ask and query this tool, and then it'll be equally productive, if not more. Next slide, please. So everybody loves pretty pictures of a whale. One of the opportunities that generative AI gives us, and one of the areas that I think we as a state will just be able to pioneer and help break some new ground in, is the idea of digital twins and synthetic data. Anybody familiar with that term, synthetic data? You know, a few of you. Not to get too geeky, but essentially, let's put it this way: like, if UNC used an AI algorithm and it super accurately, predicted a certain outcome, and it's the best in the world at it, it'd be very hard, near impossible for them to share that AI algorithm with anybody else. Why? Because the data used to train that AI algorithm, right, has private data, has sensitive health data in it. So what if, in order to share it, we were able to take down that private and sensitive data and replace it with another data set, a synthetic data set that we use AI to create, that is statistically identical, will give you almost the same answer every single time, but without any of the privacy considerations being violated, right? Now, all of a sudden, we can start to share and we can start to, collaborate. So we, one of my last projects at SAS that I was a part of, we did something with NC State around protecting the right whales using synthetic data. So I just thought I'd share. Next slide, please. So there are only 370 of these beautiful animals left in the world. Most of them live off of the coast of the Northeast. And the problem is, like, that's next slide, please. That's a really busy shipping lane. So if this wasn't a PDF, like, you would see those dots. Those blue dots are ships always moving. And in the lower left red dot there, that is a little baby right whale trying to make its way up the northeastern seaboard, right? And it's like playing Frogger or Crossy Roads is the newer version of Frogger, but like just trying to live its best life while avoiding all that maritime traffic. And so in order to make a digital twin of the northeastern seaboard and all the maritime traffic, they wanted to employ AI, but they only had, and I thought this was a lot of data, considering you only have 370 of these beautiful beasts. They had like 50,000, I want to say, data points, right? But we needed to get to at least 500,000 data points in order to have enough data to train an AI. So we created some synthetic data, and it's more than just cutting and pasting like 10 times, 20 times, right? Like, there's some statistics in it. So, and by the way, that's the difference between synthetic data, where you start off with some real data, and then you use some, what I call like traditional AI, good old like trustworthy statistics and all that numerical goodness, and create a larger synthetic data set that is statistically identical, versus what is called a simulated data set, which is like, hey, ChatGPT, create for me 500,000 data points on right whales. And you don't know whether it's right or not, right? So, and there's room for both, right? There's pros and cons to both. But anyway, so that's just an example of synthetic data. I'm getting ready to see our first prototype of synthetic data from our enterprise data office here at the state in the next couple of weeks. So we're pretty excited about being able to do that. And by the way, we as North Carolina, we have all the ingredients on the table for us to be a powerhouse in the AI movement, right? So I heard the dean of UNC's School of Data Science speak, and he said per capita, here in the RTP, we generate more scholarly AI materials per capita than any other region in the nation, right? And possibly the world. If we're not number one, we're up there, you know? And as one of the things that I realized coming to the state was like, when you look at the AI supply chain, everything, you know, we have rare earth minerals being mined in spruce pine. We have, you know, one of our private sector companies, and I think they're part of NC Tech, but like, you know, fabricating their high-end AI servers here in the RTP, right? We have Wolfspeed making chips. Like we have, you know, an organization out of Charlotte just making glass for the fiber optics that connect data centers. Like when you look at the AI supply chain, if ChatGPT is to be believed, the only thing North Carolina does not have would be rare earth mineral processing. I'm like, that's pretty resilient, right? So with all these AI innovation dollars floating around out there, it's like, hey, you know, come to North Carolina, because no matter what else is happening in the world, we've got a lot of this in our backyard, right? Next slide, please. So, in order to go faster, right, as we build this trust, I came up with a simple 4-letter acronym called RIDE. Next slide, please. And my goal is this: anywhere in the state, at any agency, wherever you go, anytime we talk about AI projects, let's use these four metrics, right? So RIDE, what kind of a ride are we setting up for the people that we are leading, the people that we are serving? So first is risk. Actually, hit the next slide for me, please. The first is risk. Is this a low, medium, or high risk, right? Remember the EU AI Act? Like, are we talking biometrics, you know, on like for Medicaid data, or are we just talking like a chatbot on publicly available data, right? Second is impact. Is this just for me as a department, or is this going to be used by statewide, or is this going to hit the public, right? Because each has a different risk profile. The third is data sensitivity, right? Low, medium, or high. Again, public data or biometrics. And then last is the ethics question. For whom, if you could just learn to ask one question that you aren't asking currently, it's for whom does this fail? As an engineer, I was trained. If you give me a problem, I will give you 5 different possible solutions. Nobody ever taught me to ask for whom does this fail? But with AI, as quick and as powerful as it is, you're going to find out pretty quickly for whom this fails, you know, as soon as you flip that switch, if you don't ask it up front, right? So this is what I call like minimum viable governance. Like this is just step 1 of the AI, trustworthy AI playbook for us as a state. But I wanted to give you guys a flavor of that, what I could use everybody's help in. Can you imagine? So my first priority is all the state agencies, right? But if the city and county governments, if all of us public servants in North Carolina can start talking about AI the same way, measuring the risks the same way, and having your oars hit the water at the same time, now all of a sudden, and then pulling in the same direction, right? Now all of a sudden, we can start to move. And that's a level of organization I've not seen or heard of from other states yet. And more importantly, it would be the right thing to do for us and our citizens, our 11 million citizens. Next slide, please. So, and this is just to show you, like, again, I showed you step 1, but there's a journey here. And this, you know, I grew up at SAS from an AI governance standpoint, so that's why you see the SAS logo there and that methodology. But there's a lot of great work being done. Take heart. Like North Carolina, across the agencies, there's a lot of great work being done. So, you know, I don't care if it's the SAS flavor or somebody else's flavor, like we're gonna pull it together and have one consistent way to manage it. And the same set of guardrails for every agency. And my vision for every agency is, you know, we're not gonna come in and tell you what to do. We're gonna lay down the guardrails. Here are the 4 pillars, right? Every agency gets to decide what they want to do, where they wanna set the metrics. Do I wanna be a leader here or just compliant? And there's no wrong answer. Just choose your own adventure and just make sure you're managing to it. It's kind of our position from DIT. Next slide, please. All right, so, and this will be a quick point around policies and training. So just again, laying down the guardrails, if you will, talking to every agency CIO to say, hey, what do you need? And again, AI is changing quickly. So trying to roll out the policies that they need to underpin them, to roll out the trainings that we need to have the most AI literate state workforce. I think this month we kicked off a training with 70 of our state leaders in AI leadership training. So you're not getting taught how to code a chatbot, you're being taught how to fold AI into your leadership style. So we're excited about that. And I'm talking also with with our human resources colleagues about, okay, what are some mandatory HR trainings, right? Just AI awareness that every single human being employed by the state should just know. And this is stuff that is good and easy and helpful. Like it may only take a few minutes to say, hey, why don't you pull up ChatGPT and upload a document and ask it upload a document that you know well and ask it some questions, or just to get familiar, right? Basic AI literacy. So we're formulating that. And then the last thing is around AI innovation. And this part makes me smile because I get to blend kind of my data for good world with the state's work. So next slide, please. And you'll hear more about this in the coming weeks. But we want AI in North Carolina to be, our reputation to be that we are trustworthy, that we're doing AI safely, but it doesn't mean that we're going to go slow, right? So the model that I deployed at SAS from a data for good standpoint, for creating stories about social impact, and it seemed to work well there, trying to bring to the state around how do we iterate quickly? How do we have rapid prototypes? Like we're talking 60-ish day sprints, right? Agency raises their hand and says, hey, I have this problem I'm wondering if AI can help solve. And then we come together in a safe place with, safe data and all of that. And we just run a quick sprint and let's just explore the art of the possible. And so trying to bring some of that, you'll hear more about that. I can't talk too much about that right now, but again, I'm super excited about that. Really grateful for, again, a governor that sees the importance of AI, the ability for it to not just benefit, but also protect our citizens, right? And again, with all that's going on in the world, all the financial pressures that each agency is facing, AI can fill that gap from an efficiency and a productivity standpoint, but we just need to make sure we do it right. So click one more. I think that's it. Right, so, yep, so I talked through that slide, and one more, Alex. Okay, so I thank you so much. You've been such a great audience. I'd love to open for questions, Brooks, if there's still time, yeah?
Absolutely. So I'd ask that it's too big of a room to go around and
Anybody want to just raise their hand and shout?
I'll just do that. I'll look on it. If you could identify yourself, just name and who you're with for context, appreciate it. So we'll start, work our way back. Anybody okay? Another question? Yeah.
My name is Chari Kambara. I'm with the Lightning Minds. So I wanted to ask you about the synthetic data. I think you mentioned about as part of the AI. So I just wanted to know, we are also working on the same AI product related to the synthetic data. Certainly would like to see kind of what exactly the state is looking for in terms of the data. We are working for some different organizations for the private sector also. We would like to see how it can be explored towards the public sector.
Yes, thank you.
Government.
Yeah, so Chadi was just saying that they deal with synthetic data, and if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, you were just raising your hand to say, hey, let's explore this together. Is that right? Because that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah. So and just so you know, my vision for AI innovation is just that. This is the place. This is the watering hole where our problems, our business problems, meet the latest and greatest. All the innovative folks that we have. Certainly in North Carolina, but from the private sector, from education, and we come together and we run these sprints together and we just explore what is good and not good for and figure out how we can partner. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Saw a few hands move. Here we go. Good. Yes.
Hey,
Yes, John.
John Minshew with Dell Technologies.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned digital twins. So Dell Technologies really concentrates on digital twins for cities around the world, right? That's the number one thing you think about when you think about a digital twin. So they can do things like you said with synthetic data to say how it affects the citizens when they put in parks and buildings, right? But do you see an opportunity when you did the Whales of taking a digital twin for an agency or their business outcomes and see how your effects of AI affects the agency itself and how it interacts with citizens?
Yeah. So did you want to repeat his question or would you mind? Fine, Brooks. So yeah, John asked a thoughtful question from Dell around digital twins and, you know, I know it sounds like Adele, you guys create digital twins of cities, right? And so have we considered that at the state to model up an agency? So it's a wonderful vision and idea. We haven't done anything along those lines yet, but would definitely love to. I mean, Amazon creates digital twins of their warehouses, right? Like, I mean, there was a time when Amazon started, it's like, I'll get this in 2 weeks, sweet. And now I get mad if it doesn't show up in 2 days, right? How do they do that? They're creating digital twins of their warehouses to know exactly where to put the right products so that they can pull it, ship it, and get it to your house within no more than 2 days, right? So our Secretary Piccioni, my boss, like she often talks about how do we move at the speed of business? How do we help government move at the speed of business? So it's stuff like that that's gonna help us get to the next level. And before we take the next question, like AI is a team sport. And by the way, you know, responsible AI is definitely a team sport. If one of us fail, we all fail. And people, society right now is really unforgiving, right? With technology mistakes. All right, so again, we need to do it right. We need partners like yourselves to help us do it right and for us to help with the learnings to share with you as we move forward. So other questions?
Hey, so how you doing? Sam Stein with NetApp. Thanks for sharing your words today. Very insightful. You talked a lot about process improvement, implementing data analytics and whatnot within the 60,000 employees of the state, different agencies. But is there a phase of it or a segment where it's focused on the citizens, the taxpayers of the state, and ultimately how is that going to be impacted? Or is it more so let's start internally and that'll kind of roll into our taxpayers?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, you know, I talked a lot about productivity, very inward focused. Is there any consideration for rolling AI out to the citizens? And I think your last comment was exactly right. I want us to make our mistakes on ourselves, have everything inwardly focused, not all of it first, right? I mean, agencies, we're going to lead with whatever the biggest need is. So there are certain, you know, like high profile challenges or problems, or hey, we're heading into hurricane season, right? How do we do better this year? So we're gonna go where the biggest needs are, but where we can, I'm encouraging people, you know what, let's just practice on the internal. And when we feel like it's safe enough, when we feel like, then we can start rolling it out to citizens in general. But I've got a couple of trailblazers, you know, across a few different agencies where they're like, no, we've got this public facing AI chatbot, you know, in Department of Commerce, that's working really well. And that is one of actually the best monitored examples of an AI project that I've seen ever, right? So I'm super proud of them and I want to take what they do and roll it out to as many agencies as I can. So they're, in general, we'll start inward first and then focus out, but we'll see what the people need.
Okay. Others? Going to now close out as we often do, or usually do, with a legislative update. Drew Moretz and his colleague Ed Turlington, who's not able to be here today, often give us an update on what's going on or not going on downtown, down the street at the legislature, and in ways in particular that affect or of interest to the tech sector. The usual handout is not yellow today. What happened? And you'll see it on the screen. It'll be part of the documents that are posted and sent out to you as well. But Drew, please enlighten us.
Thank you. Brooks, please don't tell Ed that I brought in the white copy of the handout. Sorry about that. Thank you again. And for those of you who have not, I have not met Drew Moretz with Brooks Pierce. We represent the NC Tech Association gladly and have for many years. So what we give as part of the general update is the legislature came back in January of this year. Their key focus, every long session with odd number of years or long sessions, is to get a 2-year budget done. It's important for state agencies. It's important for everyone else that relies on state agency funding. And what we have is a budget impasse currently. We had Senate Bill 257. The Senate led the process. They passed their bill back in April. The House followed suit, passed their bill towards the end of May. And then they started each other with a standoff over the tax package. And so they do not have a updated budget. And then at the end of June, as they were heading towards the door, the fiscal year starts July 1st. So as they were planning to leave town for a while, the House passed one version of their budget, a scaled down 32-page bill, House Bill 192. And then the Senate passed a competing offer, which was House Bill 125, 44 pages. And again, very bare bones, skeletal, if you will. And the other chamber did not agree to the other versions, the chamber's version. So what we have is a continuing resolution. The government does not shut down, unlike in Washington, where if you don't have a passed continuing resolution or an updated budget, government shuts down. We do not have that here in North Carolina, where we do have an ongoing CR that is the previous year's recurring base budget, basically. During the session, they did tackle a number of bills. And you see those listed here that are IT related. House Bill 301, again, that's passed the House and then Senate rules. 315, third-party litigation funding ban, that's been out, where you have outside agents funding litigation, trying to get information. And that was passed not only by the House, but also Senate Judiciary passed it, and then it's sitting in Senate rules waiting for clearance before it goes to the floor. The agency bill, which is a big one for this group, was passed by the House. It's sitting in Senate rules. Again, there was a number of bills that were passed, but just did not move in the other chamber. Again, whenever they have a breakdown in budget, what they do is sort of the internal Jones Street language that we use, the term that we use is they hold hostages. So the House will pass a bill, the Senate will pass a different bill, and they'll sit there, and at the end of June, generally they'll say, all right, we'll hear this bill if you hear this bill. It's the proverbial releasing of the hostages. And most of these bills were never released. Senate Bill 416, the personal privacy protection for donors of nonprofits, protecting their information, that was passed by both chambers. It did get across the finish line, got to the governor's desk where he vetoed it. And that's sort of where we stand right now on the legislative front. So they adjourned in June to a date certain, which is next week. They'll be back in town next week, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But at our last meeting, I think we still had 3 secretaries that were unconfirmed when we last met. Please report that all of the governor's nominees have been confirmed to his cabinet. And so that is done, and they are off and running, as you see. That we've talked about. As I mentioned, next week they will be back in town, both the Senate and the House. Yesterday, Senator Berger sent out a press release saying that the Senate intends to override the vetoes, assuming they have everybody in town. If they do, the Senate, if everybody's in town and voting along party lines, the Senate does have the votes to override vetoes. The House is 1 vote short if everyone is present and accounted for and voting. There's not been a similar notification from the House that they will be doing override votes. The governor vetoed 14 bills, 7 House, 7 Senate. So whenever you hear that, you're essentially assuming that the Senate plans to take up their 7 bills and send them over to the House. And if the House has the votes, they will likewise send it over, send it back to the other chamber. So with that, they'll be back next week, and they will not be done. They will just be done for 1 week. We anticipate, we have heard rumors of a budget. Again, the tax package has held them up for a long time. There have been some discussions amongst leadership about I'll give up this if you give up that. Nothing's been agreed to at this point. So we are looking at another month or 2 before we even have really a serious discussion on a budget. Without taking questions.
Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Drew and Isa again. Thanks to Smith Anderson for having us today. As I said at the beginning, I'm being asked to remind you there's some really good food in the back of the room, so please enjoy. The cheese is fire. I can tell you that. I went back there a little earlier. Some soft drinks, et cetera. So feel free to mingle for a bit, say hello to our guests as long as they're able to hang around. And thank you very much for joining us today. We'll see you next on October 22nd. Registration for that is live on our website, speaker to be determined. It'll be back at the Brooks Pierce offices on the same building as you're accustomed to. And so look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much.